I would like to reconvene the meeting from closed session and call this meeting to order for the City Council meeting of April 20th, 2021. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cordero?
Here.
Councilmember Escobedo?
Here.
Councilmember Soto?
Here.
Councilmember Waterfield? Here. Madam Mayor Patino?
Here.
Madam, before we go,
Yes,
may I announce,
Madam Clerk.
in order to participate in the City Council meeting virtually, please register to speak using the link on the agenda under public comment or call 1-669-900-9128 and use the webinar ID number 892-2281-1010. To raise your hand to speak on a particular agenda item, please use the raise hand button in the Zoom meeting portal. If you are using a telephone, please press *9 on the telephone keypad to raise your hand to speak. When it is your time to speak, your microphone will be unmuted for the time allotted by the mayor and will be muted upon completion of your comments. Madam Mayor.
Thank you. City Attorney, Mr. Watson, would you please give the closed session report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With respect to item 1, conference with real property negotiators, instructions were provided to the negotiator. With respect to item 2, conference with legal counsel, instructions were provided to the council regarding the case.
Thank you. Our first item this evening is a proclamation, and Councilmember Cordero will be making the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Whereas the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services is promoting a new public education campaign to inform residents about no-cost resources for Earthquake Warning California, the nation's first statewide earthquake warning system. And whereas California is the first state in the nation to offer free, cutting-edge technology designed to alert Californians before shaking begins through the earthquake warning system, including the MayShake app, Android Earthquake Alert, and wireless emergency alerts. And whereas as many as 10,000 earthquakes occur each year in California, and mitigation measures can save lives, reduce property damage, and alleviate economic dislocation caused by earthquakes. And whereas every community member of Santa Maria can take proactive steps to learning about the latest technology and innovations available at no cost to protect their families, employees, and neighbors from earthquakes. And whereas incorporating earthquake warning technology into the emergency planning efforts can help mitigate risk of injury and death by providing a few moments warning to take proactive actions. Now, therefore, Alice Patino, Mayor of the City of Santa Maria, hereby recognizes the month of April 2021 as Earthquake Preparedness Month in the City of Santa Maria and urges residents and businesses to learn more about Earthquake Warning California, including the downloading of the MayShake app using earthquake warning technology and sharing earthquake warning resources with the friends, family, and colleagues to help build a resilient community and strengthen the state of California in its earthquake prepared efforts. Signed by Mayor Alice Patino with the great City of Santa Maria seal on the 20th day of April 2021. And this is going to be commented on, I believe, by Amanda Moyer with the California Emergency Services, and I think she's on Zoom.
Ms. Moyer, if you're available to speak.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your participation in April as Earthquake Preparedness Month and for partnering with us to spread the word about Earthquake Warning California tools and the resources that we have to offer. California was the first in the nation to implement a statewide earthquake alert system with the announcement of the MayShake app in 2019. So we are encouraging Californians to not only download and use the MayShake app as part of their preparedness plan, but to think through actions that they could take if they receive a warning by having a plan in place well ahead of time to take protective actions, be it on the road, at home, at school, or at work, or any other settings Californians may be in when an earthquake happens, and that can make a life-saving difference. And as last year taught us, sometimes life catches us off guard, but we are happy to share now that earthquakes don't have to catch us off guard. And we just thank you again for partnering with Cal OES and Earthquake Warning California to spread the word about the tools and resources we have to offer for a more resilient city of Santa Maria and a more resilient California. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moyer.
Thank you very much. Next, we have the public comment period. Madam Clerk, could you please read the criteria for the public comment portion of the agenda?
Yes, Madam Mayor. This time is reserved to accept comments from the public on consent agenda items, closed session items, or matters not otherwise scheduled on the printed agenda this evening. Unless otherwise directed by the mayor, speakers will have 3 minutes to comment. Direction to staff may be given. However, state law does not allow action to be taken on matters not on the printed agenda. And as a reminder, if you wish to speak during this public comment portion, please raise your hand using the raised hand button in the Zoom meeting portal. Or if you're participating by phone, please use the press star 9 on your keypad. When it is your time to speak, your microphone will be unmuted for the time allotted by the mayor. And Madam Mayor, it looks like we have one request to speak from Valerie Trenev. Go ahead, Ms. Trenev.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. So my name is Valerie Trenev, and I am a resident of Orchid, and I am the state president of an organization called California Association for Medical Laboratory Technology. And I worked at Marion Medical Center Laboratory for 25 years. I'm now an elementary school teacher. And the reason I'm calling in tonight is I missed the deadline for a proclamation, but I'd like to share information about my profession, that of clinical laboratory science. And so I'm going to read the wording from a sample proclamation and then give a little plug for people who might be interested in the field at the end. Whereas professionals who practice in the medical laboratory are invaluable members of the patient's healthcare team, and whereas these well-educated and highly trained health professionals who perform and evaluate medical laboratory tests to detect, diagnose, monitor treatment, and help prevent diseases save countless lives each day, and whereas their dedication to quality medical testing and exceptional patient care is demonstrated daily in thousands of laboratories, and whereas, hold on a second. Laboratory medicine is an honorable profession and vital to sustaining a high standard of healthcare. I would like to mention that this is National Medical Laboratory Professionals Week. It is April 18th to 23rd, and it's a time once a year where we recognize these hidden heroes. Everybody knows what a doctor and a nurse is, but not everybody knows what a clinical scientist is. The clinical scientists, along with our laboratory technicians, our phlebotomists, and our lab assistants, all make up an incredible network of healthcare professionals that work to deliver quality healthcare to the public. And we are also vital to the economy, as you could see over the past year with the pandemic, how there was such a need for testing and such a backlog when we didn't have ample supplies nor personnel. So with that, I would just like to ask people who might be interested in a career that enjoy biology or chemistry, maybe those young people might, or people of older age, might be interested in this career. And it is, again, it's called clinical laboratory science. And thank you for letting me make this comment this evening. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. This is Mayor Patino, and thank you very much for coming forth and making that. I know a lot of times, like you say, we know who the doctors and the nurses are, but we aren't always aware of all the essential workers that give them the message to give to us as patients. So thank you very much for being here this evening.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
This concludes the public comment portion of the agenda. Before we move on, Mr. Stillwell, do you wish to make any comments? Would you like to comment that we are in the orange now? I've got that on my My phone, my. So what does that mean for the people in Santa Maria?
So,
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
moving to the orange tier allows us to further open up some of our services. For example, our library will be able to open up the second floor, and I think we approved a safety plan to do that yesterday in preparation for the orange tier. It allows restaurants to expand their indoor use, and like shopping, like the mall, is able to better expand their use. I don't think bars can open up back yet, but some of our youth activities are able to open back up. We're able to have more flexibility at the swimming pool. So for the city, it allows us to continue or to expand our ability to provide services to the public.
And gyms are able to expand as well.
Yeah, and the gyms go up from 10%, I think, to 25.
25%,
Yeah,
50% at the restaurants, yeah.
yeah, that's good
Okay,
news.
very good, thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar, Madam Clerk, could you please read item number 3?
Routine items are presented for city council approval without discussion as a single agenda item in order to expedite the meeting. The consent calendar is approved by roll call vote with one motion. These items are discussed only on the request of council members.
Does anyone have items they wish to pull for discussion?
If not, Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the consent calendar as submitted.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Waterfield.
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero.
Aye.
Councilmember Escobedo.
Hi.
Councilmember Soto.
Aye.
And Madam Mayor Patino.
Aye. Next, we have a public hearing. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title?
The city council will consider the Santa Maria Airport Business Park Specific Plan, General Plan, and zoning map amendment at the northwest corner of Orchid Expressway, Highway 135, and Union Valley Parkway. Madam Mayor and council members, staff has requested that this public hearing item be continued to a date undetermined at this time.
It sounds good to me. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk.
Who did you say made the request to continue?
Staff.
Staff.
Okay.
If I may,
Yes.
Madam Mayor, we will be republishing and renoticing following last-minute information that was received on the item.
Okay. Does the airport know about this also? Oh, okay.
I was on a call with their consultants on this project.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Watson. Next, we have another public hearing. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title?
The city council will consider new and updated user fees for several city departments, as well as review and approve a user fee cost recovery level policy.
Staff report is to be made by Director of Finance, Ms. Harvey, after an introduction of the item by Mr. Stillwell.
Sure, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to provide some context and step back and reflect upon why we're here to recommend increase of fees on today's agenda. So in the last year, there's been a lot of activity in the economy with economic impact due to pandemic, and then stimulus money from the state to help fund transit, help fund people from being evicted from their homes. The federal government came out with the Rescue Act plan, which is a significant amount of money. So there's been a lot of kind of ups and downs, but I want to go back to the budget that council adopted, which continued to show, and this has grown over time, where our expenses have grown faster than our revenues. And as a result, we have more pressure to, if we don't have the revenue to pay for these costs, we have more pressure to reduce services and reduce staffing. And if you recall, the budget you adopted did reduce staffing. We were fortunate enough through attrition to avoid layoffs. So, you know, granted, we had all the noise in the between with the stimulus and the economy. We're really still on the trend from where we were with the budget, with our own budget problems. And let me see. So, yeah, I mentioned we don't have enough funding for streets and sidewalk maintenance, aren't able to maintain our current staffing levels, not enough funding for our parks or fleet. And those are costs we've been able to avoid and manage to a certain extent, but not avoid totally, or delay and manage, but not avoid totally. And so it's going to be an issue to address for either this city council or future city councils. And, you know, while those are important priorities and priorities that we need to focus on as a city, there's other rising costs that we as the city or the city council don't have discretion over. And we've talked a lot about CalPERS rising costs. Those are just going to happen. We also have rising costs of liability insurance. The liability insurance premiums have really reset during the pandemic, and the risk analysis that the insurance companies have seen in insuring cities. And then workers' comp costs continue to go up, and we're seeing our workers' comp fund is underfunded based on what we expect we are going to need to settle the cases. And so those are costs that are going to happen anyway, right? So if we don't have the revenue to cover our basic expenses, those costs are going to, again, force more reductions in other services, in our basic services to the community. And the other reason this item is before the council today is because each of you at one time expressed thanks to prior city councils for leaving the city in a good financial position, being able to weather this economic impact better than most cities, or I'd say most cities, but at least many of the cities in the region. A lot of the cities did have big layoffs, they had big shutdowns, and we were fortunate to not have that. We kept working to the extent we could. We modified a lot of our working, but we were able to stay open for business, and we were fortunate to be able to stay economically strong. And so I think I've heard the city council's desire as well with your goals, but also talking about how to use the LEAF fund and the economic reserve that you want to pay it forward and be good financial stewards of the taxpayer dollars using available funding wisely. So that's why we're here now. Back when the budget was adopted, the council said, look at other revenue to make sure we have the funding to pay for services. So I can explain a little bit more what here looks like. So we do still have a hiring freeze. We're not hiring staff unless we have some basic assurance that we're not going to have to reduce the staff in the next budget, knowing that our costs are going up. It's just that's just a basic, even though we need the people, need the service, we need the succession planning, it's just a basic human interest to not hire someone, have them relocate their family, and then not be able to have a job promised to them shortly thereafter. We continue to stay focused on using our taxpayer dollars for those services that the public generally benefits from, primarily public safety. But even with those tactics, we're still looking at a turnover of something like 20 police staff in the next year or two. We have a shell of a fire prevention unit that's trained to both investigate arson, do normal fire investigations, complete inspections, and complete fire plan checks or plan review of new construction plans. We have a planning staff of 4 who are also, besides working to update the general plan for the first time in a few decades, are also completing a record level of current planning, mostly with a lot of ADUs and a lot of infill. There's a lot of development going on in the city. And so we have this choice really where we don't have the fee revenue nor the taxpayer dollars to do all of it. And so we've looked at the fee increases to give us a chance to maintain the services, but then realign them to where the private sector is paying for the services they're receiving directly from the city, and the public taxpayers are subsidizing those particular services that still have a public benefit. And I'm sure you're hearing as well, but I'm hearing from developers it's taking longer to get permits, longer to get approvals, longer to get inspections. And, it'll just keep getting worse unless we're able to address this problem. And so we don't have the tax dollars now to sustain the subsidies, which planning alone is 70% subsidized. And I know there was a time when there was a council or a conscious council priority to subsidize new development. And I hope to be able to get back to that time, but I don't think the intent, at least back in the 2005 report, the intent was to never subsidize planning to that extent. And the reason it happens, same reason our budget keeps getting more out of balance is the costs keep going up and the fees didn't go up to the same extent. And so I just hope that if we do get back to the time when we can maintain core services and subsidize services, keeping our costs low and helping facilitate the private sector and new development, I just hope in the meantime, we're able to keep our core services. We've worked hard to build great infrastructure, have the best public safety services on the Central Coast. And, you know, we could build them back if they decay, but it's not an experiment I recommend having at this time. And then there's a practical reason to raise the fees too, and Ms. Harvey will talk more about that, but we haven't raised fees since 2005 to the extent that we've really reviewed the cost of service and aligned it. And so the service decreases. As a result of that, we've had service level decreases and development takes longer to approve. And then the fiduciary reason to raise the fees, or to at least realign the fees, is to be able to honestly tell the taxpayers we're using their tax dollars wisely. And so this proposed fee adjustment tonight and the recommended action is really to recenter the cost to the benefits. So when a particular person benefits from a service, they pay for it, not a general taxpayer. But that also allows the taxpayer dollars not only to go to the general services, but they also will help subsidize the services that do have public benefit. There's a lot of the services we provide that aren't just benefiting the particular person receiving the service, but do help protect the neighborhood, you know, from a fire or from other things that we also are spending time doing the work on. And so they should get, people, whether it's developers or the public, should get quality service for the fees they pay. And again, we're not recommending raising all fees as high as possible. We conducted an analysis of the services we provide, what it costs, what we charge, and we align those fees to the cost of service. And we recommend doing that more often than we have been because, you know, otherwise we get in this situation where some of those adjustments have to be a lot higher more immediately than they would otherwise be. I'd say the report, a couple comments. So the report from the consultant mentioned that the city council now has to assist its constituents to understand that under the California Constitution, the intent is to first, that taxes finance those services for which there are no other alternative way to pay for them, and that service charges and special assessments should be utilized to finance those things for which benefits can be determined, and that the beneficiaries of such services be charged in direct relationship to the benefits they derive. And then the report continues on by saying that the city council should address the principles and issues enumerated in the report to determine where and to what extent taxes will be utilized to cover the costs incurred in the provision of special services. And this is where the current nature of competition between deserving public services for the scarce dollars comes into play. Who gets the dollars? Is it police or public works? Is it city streets or people wanting a zone change? Is it code enforcement or animal control? And so this is the nature of the tough policy questions that, you know, today being an elected official, we have the pleasure of trying to address. But so it's complicated. We know it's a difficult issue, but we see it as one that really sustains our ability to provide services, even the services that are going to become more expensive, and then allows us to be able to continue manage these fees going forward so we're able to adjust them more incrementally over time. And then with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Harvey, Finance Director Mary Harvey, for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Stillwell. Good evening, City Council, staff, and public. Tonight, staff is requesting that City Council approve new user fees and the user fee cost recovery level policy. Okay, see if I can get this thing to work. Is it on? I don't know. How do you turn it on? You can tell I use this often. Shad will help me. Yeah, it looks better now. Okay, thank you, Shad. All right. So first, a little bit of background on how we got here and why we're here. As Mr. Stillwell said, it's been a while we've been at this. Back during the goal-setting exercise for the 2022 budget, City Council had requested that staff take a look at revenues and how we might be able to increase those revenues because we have been looking at cuts, budget cuts, so on the expenditure side of our budget for several years, and we felt that there's a need to explore more of the revenue side And then also, because of that, we are doing the cost of services study. And the last one was done in 2005, the comprehensive study. Since then, the fees have been increased by CPI each year, except for this past July 2020. We waived those, increasing those because of the pandemic. And we contracted with revenue cost specialists to do the study. They have an extensive amount of experience and in doing these studies in California. And the intent of the study was to identify the cost of the services that we are providing today and how we provide those. It was not a study that was to determine whether it was not a cost efficiency or a process efficiency study. So those are two different kinds of studies. So this was strictly to determine how much the cost of services we are providing today and the processes that we have as of now. We also provided or developed a user fee cost recovery level policy, which is a little of a mouthful to say. But the reason we did that is, one, the city does not have one. And so this will help us to define the subsidy levels for broad categories of fees. It will help the public understand why certain fees categories are subsidized while others are not. And it also provides guidance to staff when they're developing a fee, if a new fee needs to come forward to council, and how they might be price that and develop the cost recovery level of that fee. We brought the cost study and the draft policy to council on February 1st meeting, and our consultant, Mr. Eric Johnson, had gone through the study and explained how to read the study, what the policy was about, and the process and the theory behind the cost study. And at that time, we also asked we requested to hold a public workshop. Council requested that we hold two, and we did hold those two public workshops, one on February 23rd in the afternoon, and then again on March 11th, and that one was in the evening from 7 to 9 was what it was scheduled to do. We did have 62 participants at our attendees at the first workshop and 33 at the second workshop. That does include staff and council members in those numbers. So just as a stat on that. And then from those workshops, the comments had three themes primarily. There was quite a few comments, but the three themes were really that rec and park fees should not be increased, that this isn't the time to raise fees because of COVID, and that services that indirectly benefit others or that potentially generate more city revenue should have a lower cost recovery. So those are the main comments that came out of that. So I will now go on to what our staff's recommendations are. So first I'm going to go over just the user fee cost recovery level policy. In that policy, we only made, we added some things. The policy statements themselves, there were 6 of them. We did not change anything in those. And the target cost recovery levels, which there were 3 levels, a high, medium, and low, and we did not change anything in that area as well. The one item that we did add was how fees will be updated in the future. And so we have three ways. It's 3-pronged. Annually, we'll be looking at them and would update them by CPI in accordance with our municipal code, unless there's a significant change in the process or costs. So we'll be looking at them every year. And then biannually, in line with our two-year budget, we would review for significant changes in process and costs. So essentially, every 2 years, the staff will be looking and saying, hey, has anything changed? Are we doing things differently? And if those have, or there's a significant cost change, and that could be a consultant type fee, or it could be more of if there was some kind of an increase in salary and benefits that came up that was significant, that would impact those. And then the third item is a comprehensive cost of services study like we did this time, that would be conducted a minimum of every 10 years. And the reason we did a minimum of 10 years is because the thought is that if we're looking at them every 2 years, that we shouldn't get so out of line. That isn't to say that we couldn't do it sooner. We could do it in 5 years if we felt that was what the need was, or the council felt the need was that. But we wanted to put at least a minimum that it would be done in those 10 years. And that would take an independent study, coming in and looking and asking all those questions that maybe staff may not ask, just because they're not as familiar with the different types of things that goes into this type of a study, so. Now on to our recommendation for the user fees themselves. Staff is recommending fees be approved as identified in the study and shown under new fees in the citywide user fee schedule, which is attachment A to the council report, with 2 changes. One is on the environmental initial study and negative declaration, which we have reference numbers on the attachment, and so that's S015. We're recommending that update that fee to a flat fee of $6,830 per application. The original recommendation was a deposit of $8,000 with charges at the fully allocated hourly rate for the personnel involved, plus any outside costs. Staff had taken another look at this process and determined that the process can be done at the same time, and a flat fee would be a better approach and on average, the fee will result in 100% cost recovery. The second change that we're recommending is an environmental impact report, and that's S016. And the update is the initial deposit to be determined by staff. The original recommendation was an initial deposit of $40,000 with charges at the fully allocated hourly rates for all personnel involved plus the outside costs. This change allows the deposit to more closely match the expected cost of the EIR for each project. The applicant would be charged a fully allocated hourly rates for all personnel involved plus the outside costs. However, in reality, the city never produces an EIR in-house.
I just want to make sure I'm following you correctly.
Okay.
So are we talking about the rough grading plan check? The
No.
S060?
016.
Oh, 16, thank you so much.
016.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's where I was
That's
confused.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
the two that are recommended changes are 015 and 016. So the EIRs, we do not produce those in-house, so the applicant would be charged for the outside costs only.
So then you would eliminate the 23,470 deposit?
That's on the 15, I believe. Though that's the old rate.
Okay.
The new rate, the column on new rate was 40,000, it said for 16.
So instead of 23,470, it's going to be 40,000?
No,
Or,
Instead of 40,000, it's going to be at the discretion of the staff,
correct.
based on the hourly.
I have them here too. Yeah, I do. I'm going to grab it here, right here. I will grab it for you.
So what kind of discretion will staff use to determine?
I'm going to ask
Yeah.
Mayor, members of the council, the process would reflect what we do today. For EIRs, they're complicated technical documents, and we request proposals for this environmental work. They're almost always done by outside consultant, and the applicant would be responsible for paying the charges incurred by the cost of the outside consultant.
Okay.
So it would not be any different than the current process.
Okay, so then they would just get the bill from the outside consultant, or does that go through you?
We process the invoices.
You process, and now is there a charge for
What-
you guys to process the invoice?
What we usually
Okay.
do is we collect some funds that we put in a treasurer's trust, and those monies stay there until we take it out to pay for to cover the invoices for
Okay,
the outside
perfect.
consultant.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so those are the two changes. I did want to point out that for leisure and cultural services, which is Rec and Parks and Library, the fees are not increasing except for on Rec and Parks, the ball field rentals, which is S182. Those are increasing to cover the electricity costs associated with that. It's not for any personnel cost associated with those rentals. And then the library room rentals, S187, those are increasing, or we're recommending to increase to make them consistent with how the other city facility rentals are handled. And then also, I wanted to point out that our existing building fees are not increasing, and that there are some fees that are not specifically identified in the study, and those will be charged at the fully cost allocation. And those are for, in particular, it's like the police will have a special event that somebody needs to have police services at, and so we don't know how much those are going to cost until they tell us what the event is, how many hours, what kind of personnel needs to be at those in order for us to pay for that. So that would be they'll be charged by that position.
What about nonprofits? Do they pay a fee right now for police officers?
Yes, we do.
Is there a difference in,
There is not a difference
There's
in
not
the
a
cost
difference.
that I know, not under this, it would be the fully allocated cost of
and
that
what number
position.
is that?
Ms. Harvey, excuse me, can you make sure you talk into the mic, please?
Yes, I'm trying to follow
Oh,
the
it's
6
in a-
inches away. It says 6 inches away.
Ms. Waterfield, it's you. It's not Ms. Harvey.
Okay. Okay, no, I'm sorry. And what item was that?
Those that are not specifically in there, it won't be listed on there.
Oh, it's not on this at all.
Right, and the way it's listed currently on the fee study is to see the department. So that's where they would have the fee that's associated with a police officer or for a corporal or whatever it's typically police officers, but that's what it says currently, so it would remain the same. It just would be at the fully allocated cost.
Okay, and maybe I can ask Jason this. What do we charge to use our police officers for nonprofits and just regular events? Do you?
We have a rate, but it's actually separate. I think there's two different rates, I believe, under the school district. There's a certain defined rate and I don't know that one.
So then
It's
we're
in the-
saying that all the rates will be the same?
The same as what they've, at the current rates, though.
Okay,
And so
okay.
they update them, we update them now annually to what the current rate is for that position.
So let's see. She says, hope I got too much stuff going on here. Yeah, nonprofits are charged the cost allocation rate. So we do a cost allocation rate for nonprofits. That's just really what it costs for the staff and the
Okay.
support, like the vehicles. And then there's a full rate recovery we have. And then, like the chief said, we have other rates with the schools that we contract
Okay,
with.
and those will stay the same? Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. All right, and then I wanted to also show a pictorial of what we're recommending and why. So the chart here, the two charts, the one on the left illustrates the current fees, and this shows that the city is only recovering 5.2 million, or 32% of costs of services right now. And taxpayers or ratepayers, depending on the type of service, are paying for 68%, or about 10.9 million of those costs. The chart on the right shows that the same costs, but based on the new fees, and it would show that the recovery level will improve to 53%, or 8.6 million, and taxpayers would continue to pay for 47%, or 7.5 million of the costs. So there still is a subsidy from tax dollars. Much of it would be with Rec and Parks, and for some to the library, but most of it's probably Rec and Parks, and there are some fees that are limited by statute and other regulations. So there are some that we, even though we have higher costs, we cannot charge that fee. And then lastly,
Excuse me, can you give me an example of that?
Okay. Yes. For example, we had a whole bunch of those. There are some, I don't think you have the handout with you?
The handout we provided shows which services we're mandated to provide that that aren't necessarily services you want, but services we have to provide per the state and aren't fully recovered otherwise. And then I think there's
a note too
like
on here.
Yeah, there's like a fixed $125 charge for, we'll get a specific. There's a few just that are set in statute that are a fixed cost, that we just have to charge what they say we can charge.
It's mandated.
Yeah, underneath the, on the attachment A, there's a letter that says for fee restricted by law, and those are letter Cs. So on the side, the far right, if it has a C next to it, kind of a footnote, if you will, it's restricted in some way by statute. So there are several of them that are. And there's some in, I know in police was some, so I was looking at that yesterday.
What I'm hearing,
Safety.
when I'm listening to you is, we're talking about the ratepayers, and the ratepayers not paying as much as they have been in the past as for the fee service. How will that look to a ratepayer in their budget? That's what I want to know. Each ratepayer's budget, how will that look on each household? Because when you talk about things like that, that's how I assimilate, the ratepayers aren't going to be paying that much. So it's got to benefit them in their pocket. So how does that benefit them in their pocket?
I think I can answer. I think I get where you're going here.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So the ratepayer, if it's, so those fees, that would be from utilities that would hit into their bill, right? They would end up, those costs are going to end up into their bill. So if they're paying, that would essentially, in the future, when we're doing rates for the water bills and the sewer bills and those would then come down based on that now they're not paying for somebody else's costs associated with that. So now on a taxpayer standpoint, it's that the city would be able to provide additional services or better services for general services.
Okay, so that will, now let's not talk about utilities, let's talk about community development, where most of the fees are going to be generated. How does that benefit them?
How does it benefit
The taxpayers.
taxpayers? It benefits the taxpayers because they are not going to be subsidizing or paying for the costs associated with a different developer or another business who is benefiting directly from that service.
And how will that show up in their household budget? Okay, so that's.
So,
what-
yeah, the issue now is it's not transparent because.
Right, okay.
It's over time kind of crept in to subsidize all these other fees we're talking about. So if we realign the fees like we're recommending, it'll pull that money out and so it won't change their tax dollars, but it'll allow their tax dollars to go for the general services we all benefit from, primarily police and fire, but also fixing our roads and our sidewalks.
Okay.
So, yeah, it'll be, instead of the stuff we all use getting
Instead of monetary,
worse.
it will be the
Quality.
use,
Yeah, they're
quality of the
getting
city.
more for what they
Yes.
now
Okay.
pay for.
Okay.
They get,
Yes.
they get more for what they now pay for.
Excuse me, Mr. Cordero?
Thank you, Mayor. I think that I'm going to ask kind of the same thing that Councilwoman Waterfield's asking, just in a little bit different way. These rate increases on the city, you're not asking for these or requesting them for the purposes of making money. You're only asking that the people that are asking for a service reimburse for that service, so that the average taxpayer, you, me, others in the community, are not having to pay for that. In other words, I pay my taxes, and my taxes go to pay for what's not paid for when somebody goes into Mr. Ng's office and wants to do something, and the taxpayer has to end up using some of their money that they, or the city uses their money in order to pay for that service. So the only purpose of these fee increases is to recover the cost that we have to absorb in order to provide the service.
That is-
It's not really unlike going to a plumber and saying, hey, I'd like to get this fixed, and the plumber says, well, yeah, but your neighbor is going to have to pay for part of it, but you only have to pay for this much. So we're asking the consumer to pay for the service that they receive from the city. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you very much.
And from a city, running it from our own point of view, our own finances, so if there's no one demanding that service, we should not have any costs, or at least have a lot fewer costs. And right
Yes.
now, we have costs whether the people are getting the service or not.
Right. Thank you, Mary.
Welcome.
I have a question.
Okay.
So these $3.5 million that, a little bit more than that we are basically expecting to receive if we go through this increase, are we talking about that we will be expecting the same amount of permits and basically the same we've been receiving in other years? Or what's the?
The study would be based on what we expect to, on average, get every year. So, there's some things that are going to be dependent on different needs, what different items, but they base it on what they believe is going to be on average for the time frame. So some of the items that you really can't predict, you have one every few years, or you don't have enough to say that's the average, then there's that additional revenue is not included in that number. Does that answer
you.
your question? Okay, great, thanks.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I will just conclude with what staff's recommendation approval is of the user fee cost recovery level policy, which is the Exhibit A of the resolution, and that the new fees effective July 1st, 2021, as identified in the cost of services study and shown in the citywide user fee schedule, which is the attachment A of the agenda report, with the following changes. The environmental initial study negative declaration, S1015, new fees changed to $6,830 per application, and the environmental impact report S016, new fee changed to read initial deposit determined by staff with charges at the fully allocated hourly rates for all personnel involved, plus any outside costs. And that concludes my report. Mr. Eric Johnson and Chu Tai from Revenue Cost Specialists are on the phone, and city staff and I are available to answer any questions that council may have.
So I'm understanding you want us to adopt attachment A plus your additional changes.
Yes. And the policy.
Yeah.
So one of the groups, the first group of recommendations Ms. Harvey went through was setting policies where we're going to review the fees more methodically and try to avoid kind of getting into where we're behind the curve. And then the other one is what you just alluded to of updating or approving Exhibit A with the changes as stated.
Mr. Escobedo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I have a question for the city attorney. So one of the charge, the increase that that kind of like, it was a little bit pretty notorious was the increase of the appeal to city council that went from $300 to $29 to $12,707. And I was wondering if there's any, if that's a legal raise, if there's any legal concern or any restriction of that? Yeah.
Well, with any appeal that comes before council, there can also be a request for a waiver of fees or a refund of fees. Generally, that's clearly within the discretion of council. What the staff did was identify the actual cost of bringing something in front of council, and that's what the cost is. Again, that's something that is entirely within the discretion of council, depending on the appeal, the type of appeal. So generally, the type of appeal that might come would be a denial of a planning commission item or a variance or something like that. So it may be a land use context. So a lot of it depends on the type of appeal, but that's the amount of time and cost to bring an appeal to council. So there's no legal impediment, but again, when an appeal comes in front of council, council has a lot of discretion to deal with those items.
And a lot of them do come from Planning Commission for the appeal. It does look like price gouging. I mean, that's very extreme. And I'm speaking personally for myself, I don't want to feel that a constituent who is trying to develop something or has a concern, did not care for what the Planning Commission did, to look at that and say, oh my gosh, I can't afford that. I feel like they're just blocking constituents from coming to us for a second opinion, and I want to keep that door as open as possible.
Right, that is the policy question. So as Mr. Watson mentioned, so the cost analysis shows that's what it should be. We
can do our own price.
Yeah, we're not doing it as a way to dissuade people from appealing. We just want to highlight there is a cost to doing that. Chun, as they always do, they work with people. They provide, free meetings and free consulting, and we could make it clear that if they do want to appeal and they're serious about it, if they're serious about it, they'll put up the appeal funding, and then when it comes to council, council can waive it if that's the council's desire.
But that price would stop them from coming forward. Some may not be able to afford it.
Yeah, and that's the policy issue, is do you want to make it low and let people appeal?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, usually the appeals we were seeing are like at the, on Santa Maria Way, that housing development going in there and even though, it's usually infill housing, right? And the neighbors don't want to have the housing. And so by not having the accurate appeal fee, we're in the same boat where they'll just appeal it and bring it forward because there's no real cost to doing that. What we're saying, there is a cost to doing that, and it costs this amount. And, but they're not, at the end of the day, they can get that fee waived.
Before they bring it. They don't have to make that deposit.
No, it would, yeah.
See,
I don't know that I.
Again, if you set a fee then the fee must be paid, and the fee
Okay.
can be
Yeah.
restored. The question becomes, again, do you want it to, these are policy items. Do you want to have a fee that's different for a proponent of a particular land use item as opposed to an opponent? So again, if you want a constituent appeal fee versus a proponent appeal fee, and I'm confident that at least one person who's going to call in is going to challenge any kind of developer-related
Yeah.
fee, but it really depends on what you folks want to do.
Because we
to-
have
to
also-
balance those two items.
We have all sizes of businesses that come through, that want to develop, small businesses, medium business, large businesses. And we're just being very, in my opinion, we're just being very heavy-handed with this huge increase sticking out there. And the small businesses may not be able to pay that fee up front, and they're going to hope and pray that, it gets.
An alternative always is that you can set a minimum fee at up to a maximum fee, and it could be the discretion of council as to the fee that's charged, and the minimum fee is the one that has to be deposited. But you do have to balance the fact that, again, if your policy is cost recovery, then it's harder to pick and choose these items for staff. That's the issue, is we're providing it to you across the board, and then it's totally your discretion.
And the planning fees are going up quite a bit, I admit, because we haven't managed them over time, incrementally increasing. We've incrementally increased our utility fees. We bring those to council every 3 years or so. We've kept our building inspection fees current, so those are full cost recovery. And, people are still paying them, people still receive the benefit. I think it's just the tension is jumping it up to where it should be. And as far as the small business versus large business, so most of these fees, almost all of them are, unless there's a small business that requests some kind of land use change that goes through the planning commission, maybe they have they want to convert a restaurant to, some nightclub or some other use, then they will be paying those. But for most small businesses, they would just have the new fees for the renewal of the business license, which is a $25 increase. Fire has an added fee for fire business inspections, $60. But for the big ones you're talking about.
Yes, absolutely.
Those would be for planning entitlements, not for building permits. And most of those planning entitlements are large projects like Windset, Betaravia Plaza, Blosser, Romer, and major, like the big housing developments. And those are often projects with more than $30 million of value. And the big ticket items for them are going to be the water connection fees and the development impact fees going to schools and things like that, not these fees. So in the scope of things, it's not big fees for the big development, and it's not huge impact to the small or big developers or big businesses, and it's not a huge impact to the small businesses. And then again, like I mentioned, staff will always provide the free customer service for it, and there's other fees that we have to pass along that we're just mandated to do, such as the wastewater pretreatment fees and other inspection fees we have to do for utility hookups.
Well, and what the concern I have also is that prices are increasing like crazy. The lumber has increased 50%, steel has increased. You look at gas, and everything has increased. And so, but you know what? We get money from these developers too, as well. They generate sales tax that helps with the PERS,
That's a misnomer though, because the money they pay for this to build something, we don't benefit from. And the ongoing costs that they may pay for property tax or sales tax goes for the services they get. A strawberry field rarely calls 911. The field itself doesn't, but when an apartment complex goes in there, they'll call 911 frequently, and that's
so
what
sales
that
tax,
pays for.
we don't benefit from sales tax when we've,
It
like
pays for the
Enos?
cost of service. We don't obviously have extra money from it. If we had extra money from it over these last 15 years, we'd have a surplus. And I think, the airport, this one that we continue tonight's a great example for it. We collected $13,000 for the item, for the general plan zone change, which cost somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000. And They also, they did a specific plan amendment, which right now we don't have a charge for, and our time spent on that was somewhere between $10,000 and $25,000. So we subsidize, the taxpayers subsidize that development to go down on UVP and 135 by the tune of, $40,000 or something.
So
And
what
from
if
what
we
I
can-
hear, and
In this process that we're doing exactly what the consultant says at these fees, we could also kill development too, which isn't going to benefit us at all either. So, I mean, we've got to find that happy medium there and maybe just not do the full 100% fee that they're asking to do. I'm not saying not to charge fees. I'm saying, the fees are just, it's like price gouging, and we've got to be very careful.
Well, it's still cheaper than other communities, and it's still the challenge, we still have the ongoing challenge that if we're subsidizing that fee because we don't want it to be high, then we
But
can't
Jason,
fund
we always say
sidewalks.
that it's still cheaper than other communities, but are we making it an even plateau by
No.
doing this?
No, I'm saying
That's
we're
my
still
concern.
cheaper. Yeah. But I mean, the bigger issue we have is we aren't going to be able to use the taxpayer dollars for police and fire and sidewalks and roads and parks. I mean, those are things our community pays for and should benefit from. And if there's no new development, it shouldn't cost us anything.
Mayor.
Okay, Ms. Soto?
Thank you. Jason or Ms. Harvey, or Mr. Silva or Ms. Harvey, can you share or give us enlighten us on what would happen if, what services would be impacted if we don't move forward with the recommendation that was brought to us tonight?
And the timing on this is because we do want to understand where council wants to be. And I neglected to say it is council's discretion. It's your choice of what you want to prioritize, and we'll follow that. I just want to be sure that you understand impacts and results of that. I mean, it's your choice, obviously. The timing of this is to bring it forward at this time, so as we update the budget, we can update it with good more accurate revenue numbers. And so that would be helpful tonight to understand where council wants to be on that. And as the second year of the two-year budget now has, we're slating further to reduce staffing. Right now, we can't afford a fire marshal who retired. We can't afford filling that. We can't afford filling the planning position there. We're down to 4 planners. And more people retire, we're not going to have funding to be able to do that and or to continue to fund those positions and rehire people. And so the impact of that is both to slower service and delays to the quality of the service in those fields, but also being able to make sure that we're able to continue to provide the service that we want to do. And so it gets more complicated too, where it's not real strategic for us to just leave the vacancies that happen to occur, right? If you remember the budget the council adopted, it was to the top priority was to eliminate the second first response unit out of the fire department. And that's still on the table, but we're able to avoid doing that just by the fortune or lack of good fortune of having a battalion chief and a fire marshal retire. We have the savings that way. So that would be, that challenge would continue to accumulate to the extent we're using the tax money to fund a fire marshal, for example.
Another question that I have is in reference to what Ms. Harvey mentioned, the recommendation of doing a fee study at minimum every 10 years to avoid big leaps in increases. Can you talk a little bit more about how the impact if, again, we don't move forward with with the recommendation that staff provided us tonight? How will that impact fees as we look down the road?
Well, thank you for that question. Essentially, the longer we wait, the bigger the jumps are. And so I think, and as things change, those changes are also going to need to be incorporated. So, for example, there were some fees that we had on the schedule for several years, we no longer do those just because there's a change in technology and different things like how we produce or how we provide. We used to have, copies, and now we have electronic versions and things like that, or just other services that we no longer are needed. And so those could come off, whereas we have new ones that hadn't been added that needed to be. So you have all of that changes, but I think the biggest is that these cost increases, as has been pointed out, everything is going up. And as those go up, if we don't keep pace with that on our costs recovery, then we're going to have, it's going to be more than, we're going to be subsidizing even more than the amount we are now.
Mr. Cordero?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Once again, bringing us to this, what the questions that Ms. Soto and Ms. Waterfield were asking. If we go forward and don't raise the fees, and someone comes to a particular department and asks to do something, we're going to do it. The city's going to perform, and the services needed are going to be taken care of. The question is it going to be paid for by the person making the request, or is it going to be paid for by the taxpayer that pays every day, that is going on in their sales tax, their home tax, all of those kinds of things? So we're going to pay the money. The city is going to pay for the services to a particular person. And if we don't raise the fees, then the hardworking person is going to make that payment through their dollars. And then by us having to take that money and make that payment, we're not using that money to fix their roads and do the other things. So in a sense, what Ms. Waterfield is saying is true, that it is a bit like price gouging, but we're not doing it. I mean, it's a fact that everything else has gone up, and who's going to pay for it? Either the everyday taxpayer or the person requesting the service. And I've said this before up here over the last 12 or 15 years, and that is that there's never a good day to consider raising taxes. Never. But it is something that we end up having to do. So somebody's going to pay for this. And it's either going to be the everyday taxpayer that the money goes into the general fund and then we don't have it to do other things, or it's going to be the person requesting the service. I'm suggesting to you that it needs to be the person requesting the service, as distasteful as that is. And no one likes it. I certainly don't. And I can tell that Ms. Soto and Ms. Waterfield don't like it either. But you're either going to charge the person making the request, or you're going to charge the average taxpayer. But either way, that money is going to be paid to somebody that's in the employment of the city to perform that service. So it's going to be costed out. It's a matter of who is going to pay for it. And that's an unfortunate reality, but that's as basic as it gets. Am I right?
I agree that
Thank you.
that is.
Madam Mayor.
Ms. Waterfield?
Yes, I'm not saying not to raise fees. I say we do need to raise fees, but I'm not looking at the 100%. But my question is, okay, so we talk about our streets, we talk about our underground infrastructure. We do have quite a bit of money coming in from the stimulus plan that can take care of that. And I have to choose my words very carefully here because of the closed session, and there could be some generation there as well. But it's almost like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here, which I truly am. So this is what I need you to help me to explain, Jason, is that we do have the money coming in. We can take care of a lot of things, but are we not bringing things together if we do that with the fees? We're still going to be in that same level of trying to catch up on everything.
Yeah, that's the challenge. So we'll bring the stimulus item to I think the next council meeting to get a direction from the council on that. There are some constraints with it, but the biggest problem or biggest issue, the couple big issues, they need it spent quickly, and it's one-time money. And so the challenge we have are these ongoing cost
Expenses.
increases that are just going to cause us to whittle away our service levels and reduce staff. And but I think stimulus can help in some ways. It'll help with street funding and things like that. I think, I just think that, like, I agree with what you're all saying. I mean, this is challenging. I just think the alternative that would be coming is you're going to like less.
Yes.
I mean, that's my simple answer to it.
Where would we be catching up if we did a 50% increase or a 60% increase? You know,
We looked
or-
at that. I mean, the full increase was 10.9 million.
Per year.
Yeah, and so we said, well, we're not recommending just gouging everyone, we're not recommending increasing all the fees 100%. There's some of them that the taxpayers do benefit from, there's some that we as a community want to subsidize and support, but there's others that have no community benefit that we want to make sure that the tax money they're paying for is going for the stuff they benefit from.
So what would we do? Do you take that 10 million and reduce it to 7 million?
Yeah, we reduced
What-
it to 3.8, or
3.8 is what the additional revenue is.
Yeah.
Based on the recommendations, it'd be about 3.8 million annually that would be added, could be added to our revenues,
To the general fund.
to the general fund.
Rather than the nearly 11 million that we're subsidizing.
Yeah, and then PERS goes up $1 million a year.
Yeah.
Our workers' comp's 5.3 million short, our liability insurance 2.2 million. We're not fixing streets like we've talked to you about, and we need to add 2.4 million to keep up there. I'm not saying that should all be general fund,
Yeah.
but our sidewalks are short 3.4 million a year. I mean, those are big costs that are
And
just gonna keep
what's
rising.
in our savings?
What is it now?
I knew you were going to ask me. Let me look.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know,
Did we
maybe
use most of
15
it?
million or something,
Well, we have in LEAF,
yeah.
well, it was 6.7, I believe, and then we
But that's
added
allocated,
3.6.
isn't that? Not
No, I
yet.
think that's just,
That's just the balance.
yeah.
As of last year. I don't know that I've updated since last year. Let me look real quick.
I just need to ask all these questions so I can make a decision.
Yeah, it's complicated, it's a difficult issue, and I think, there's going to be core folks who aren't going to like it. And, we're trying to, first off, we recognize we kind of got in this pickle by not managing it over time, but then also we realize there's a broader community interest in our community has a lot of confidence in our managing the city, managing its finances, and you can see that by even the 74% approval of Measure U. And I just think that's a trust we have, and it's an important trust to keep.
So
And-
since 2005, the reason we subsidized was the downturn in the economy.
No, it's the same reason our whole budget is subsidized. So our fees, for the most part, have gone up by the inflation rate, and PERS and workers' comp and liability and costs of vehicles have gone up faster than that.
Yeah.
And we can reset it and tweak it every year like we do with the utility fees or building inspection fees, and that makes it easier for people to manage it on their side for what they pay. It's just, hard to, it's just a better practice for us to do it more frequently now with, like we're proposing to do versus, and like we do with our other fees.
Will we keep people in the loop when we increase our fees,
Yeah.
committee-wise, or engaged in that type of collaboration?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Good.
go ahead.
On the policy, we are going to be looking at these annually, so we do have that ability to have a workshop on the ones where we're doing the mini, for the biannual with the budget will be, and then if it's just what I call the off year, so our
Yeah.
mid-cycle year,
Yeah.
those ones will more likely be a CPI increase, but we would still bring that back to council.
And that would be helpful. It's like the Measure U. What did they meet, twice a year? The Measure U committee? We can have a committee that meets twice a year with staff in regards to what everybody's thoughts are.
Okay, are there any more questions of Ms. Harvey? Because I need to open up the hearing. Any questions?
I have a question.
Oh, Mr. Escobedo?
Thank you. Would this increase, do we foresee any impact on the cost of housing in Santa Maria by having this?
I'm sorry, I have
If we foresee any increase on the cost of housing or living in Santa Maria, and do we foresee that, and do we have, and approximately how much would that cost to our renters?
Chun might be able to speak to that, but the consultant, because in the workshops, they said the housing costs what the housing costs. The market sets that. But I don't know, Chun, you might have more specifics.
Oh, Mayor, members of council, that's essentially the response. Housing prices are simply dictated by the market and economic circumstances.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the same thing could be said about, we have decrepit buildings that haven't been renovated and we don't see an increase in revenue from those. So it's, I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that, yes, from conversations that I've had in my role as a committee member of the Housing Development Committee through the League of Cities, it shouldn't impact the cost of housing. Because the same argument can be made for decrepit buildings, right? Like we would see less revenue coming there, but folks are still getting charged at the same rate for housing.
And, yeah, our housing costs went up $60,000 this year, and it wasn't due to fee increases. Like Chun said, it's the market driving that.
Okay, if there are no more questions, we'll hear from the public. Madam Clerk?
Yes, Madam Mayor, before we begin, I have received 5 written communications.
Okay.
The first one from the Chamber, who wrote expressing concern that there was not enough input by stakeholders on the proposed fees and indicated that the fees were oversimplistic, one-size-fits-all fee policy. The Chamber proposed several options, including approving fees to 2 times their current rate, continued waivers for projects in the downtown specific plan area, and possibly appointing a fee review committee. Lori Tamora from Urban Planning Concepts wrote more consideration should be given to stakeholders and more awareness of staff changes in the last few years should have been brought to the table. They proposed several things, including raising each fee 50% and working with the community to improve the application process. Mr. Dan Gebhardt wrote in with a recommendation for fines for code violations, considering installing IP cameras and turning off sprinklers when it rains. Mr. Tim Walters, representing Home Builders Association, wrote that while they support reasonable fee increases, they did not support staff reimbursement at 100% and suggests that staff analysis should be based on an average application to base the fees on. They asked council to work with the home builders industry to resolve a fee dilemma or fee increase dilemma. And then finally, Mr. Robert McLeod, representing in support of the item on behalf of SCIU, Local 620, indicating users of city services have been paying less than the cost of the service provided and subsidized by the general fund, which is depleting revenues for public safety, infrastructure, maintenance, library, parks, and recreation services. And that letter was in support.
Okay.
And then we have 2 individuals in attendance, and one has their hand raised.
Okay.
And that would be Lindy Hatcher. Lindy, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm speaking on behalf of the Home Builders Association of the Central Coast and this agenda item. The HBA of the Central Coast agrees with Santa Maria Chamber's letter to Mayor Patino and City Council members regarding proposed fee increases and the recommendations outlined on page 4. That was quite the summary of that 4-page letter. I think everyone should make sure they read that before moving forward. We ask you to consider benefits of housing to the city and avoid applying the 100% fee recovery model to application fees, and instead save the model for items that only benefit the recipient, like passports and photocopies. A portion of staff time during the application process is a public benefit because housing offers many public benefits to the city and its residents, including attracting new businesses to the city and knowing that their employees can live where they work, reducing greenhouse gases and vehicle miles traveled. Increasing the housing stock also decreases the severity of our housing crisis and homelessness issue. And when we build houses, we build schools and parks, and all of these benefit residents. We connect bike paths and walking paths and jogging paths and trails to other multimodal transportation options. Housing also helps the city meet its RHNA numbers and provides a source of income to the city. I just have to address the staff's user fee cost recovery level issue. Staff gave a plumber example where house A hires a plumber and the neighbor in house B ends up paying through taxes. This is very different than a builder paying for a school, a park, or bike path, while the general public has access to all of these every day, and thus they are a public benefit when they would not have access to the neighbor's plumbing. So your model is not really applicable to this. Statistics from the National Association of Home Builders and the California Building Industry Association agree every time the price of a home is increased by just $1,000, it prices out 12,300 California families from home ownership. Before we even add in compounding issues like increasingly stringent regulations on stormwater runoff and wildfires, we are already adding a national average increase of $24,000 in lumber costs to the price of each home in California, prohibiting 300,000 California families, predominantly low-income and minorities, from home ownership. If our goal is housing that is affordable to buyers, staff needs to revise their models. There seems to be a disconnect in understanding that time from repeated revisions and delays has a direct correlation to the price of a home. So please consider when approving fees. Fees and regulatory burdens are always passed on to the home buyers and renters. And this year, the $24,000 in lumber is tacked on to the price of a house. So we hope to streamline processes and learn how we can do our part to repeat issues and speed up application processes for approval. And at least 25% of the house cost is fees and regulatory before breaking ground. So this translates into city and other revenue. So we have a housing industry coalition of folks ready to meet with staff at your discretion. We only wish we could have done so during the study or prior to this being brought forward to save everyone involved time and money.
Thank you, Ms. Hatcher. We appreciate your comments. Ms. Tamura is on the line. She doesn't have her hand raised. Did you wish to speak? Thank you. Hi, Lori.
Good evening. Lori Tamura with Urban Planning Concepts. I'm also on the Chamber Board and past board member of HBA. First, I'd like to point out that this exercise started without any public engagement. It was internal staff review of all of the numbers, but no exposure or transparency happened with the public. It was only based on the planning or the city council's direction to staff to conduct workshops, which we appreciate. But there have been no changes other than the two that were presented here tonight over the last 2.5 months. we're disappointed that they didn't really listen to what we had to say. Remember, the cases and projects that Mr. Stillwell brought up are the big projects, but Santa Maria has a unique group of small entrepreneurs and Hispanic business owners that are going to get hit substantially hard with these numbers that are being presented here today. There is no process for waiver of fees. As previous city attorneys have indicated, once these fees are set, there is no waiver. And so these numbers are out of proportion to what is actually happening. I will say the credibility of this report was really challenged when you look at time extensions. Line 6 or S044 going up from $284 to $8,685. This is an approved project, getting a time extension. There shouldn't even be a hearing. It should be granted. How about public convenience and necessities going from $158 to $5,900? Or all of these, the pre-application, nobody's going to apply for a pre-application hearing now when you have numbers like $7,800, $5,700, $4,000 to do a pre-app. The idea that these fees need to go from all of the development plans, all of the planning commission conditional use permits, raising from $2,000 to $16,000, that's just, I mean, that may be what is calculated on a very myopic analysis of the numbers, but it doesn't take into account the applicants that are going to be applying for these projects can't afford these fees. And I'm talking about the young and Hispanic entrepreneurs out there. The downtown specific plan, that was supposed to be a concierge service and move projects through as quickly as possible. And yet now we're proposing substantial fees for the downtown projects. $17,000, I mean, there's big numbers here. We ask that you only raise these fees by 50%. We ask for a committee to be set up to work through these numbers because they're just out of proportion for reality. And we do appreciate the couple of changes that were made here, but truthfully, there is no mechanism for waiver of fees once you adopt these. So I would suggest that you don't at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Tamora, for your comments. And Madam Mayor, that would be the end of the requests.
Okay, I will close the public hearing and bring this item back to the council for any discussion and our motion. So, I know that when a developer comes in and does any kind of a project, they do have to put land aside for parks, they have to put land aside for schools. So that does benefit the communities. And we saw that beautiful park at Acuesta-Apache. We have beautiful parks. I think we have, 28 now? Is that the count? I guess what I'm seeing is the huge gap from where we are to where we need to be. And it's just too bad that we haven't done this incrementally because it makes you want to gasp when you see, for instance, $284 for an application, and the proposed fee is $8,685 per request. That is a huge gap. And this means housing is going to get so much more expensive. It's going to take a huge leap. It's not going to be just, $1,000 a house. It's going to be huge. I don't know the answer, and I don't know the combination here. I wish that we had met with or had maybe a committee that we formed with professionals like the BAR has. They have a landscape architect. They have different architects on there to come up with some kind of a plan or to talk about fees. I don't know, and I'm not saying that community development doesn't know their business, but I think to be able to understand how we can better put plans together, how we can expedite some of these plans. And this is a criticism we always get about some of our plans and check reviews are not being expedited. And I don't know how to do that. I'm sure that if we had people together, they could figure that out, and maybe the costs would be lower. I personally have a real problem with appeal to the city council. It makes it, 329, I think, is very low, but a proposed fee of over $12,000, almost $13,000, is to me out of the ballpark. And I don't want to sit up here and say this person deserves a waiver on his appeal and this person doesn't. I don't want to pick winners and losers in this. So that, to me, I would like to have something a little bit more concrete. But some of these time extensions and reconsideration, if we go from a current fee of $284 past $8,684, we have had people that have had time extensions, and of course you guys know what I'm talking about in community development, because I want to know when that certain project is going to be a reality, because it's something that we need, and we've been going on through time extensions. But at the same time, a proposed fee of over, like I said, over $8,000 to me is excessive. I don't know what the middle ground is here. Ms. Waterfield suggested maybe 50% of the fees. And then there's some things we are not charging for that we should be charging for. With Santa Maria being such a young community, and we've got a lot of kids that enjoy the parks and the swimming pool on that, this is a community benefit, and I'm fine with not raising the fees on recs and parks. I think that's really important to all the families in our community. Where we go from this, I'm sort of like stymied. I don't know if we can incrementally raise these fees periodically in the next 3 years or so. I know that when we were in the recession, people were not spending money. They didn't have the money to spend to do any of these developments. And so the downtown specific plan sat for a long time, but we're ready to go on that. So we have dips, we have mountains and valleys in our economy, and that causes some of these things to happen. And at the same time, costs go up for all of us. Ms. Waterfield?
Madam Mayor, you bring up a very good topic in regards to incrementally. Since we did not have any public engagement during the process of creating the numbers of the fees, I would suggest that we would raise the fees 50%, and then within the next year, let's engage the public to increase the fees for the following year or the year and a half later or 2 years later. But we do need to increase fees, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we do.
And you know what, I'm not sure, when I say a committee, I want professionals in there that know,
Absolutely.
that have background.
They have to know.
I don't want
they
someone,
have to know what things cost.
Yeah.
And
they have to know how long things take, or maybe their experience is a little different, and that could be an improvement on maybe some of our processes.
Well, for instance, the housing. They say if you're going to build a new house today, don't do it, because the number you start with, say it's going to cost you $500,000 to build a house. Lumber and steel increases so fast that they say you're not going to get into a contract until the house is built, and then that house is going to cost $800,000 at the end. And so, we're just in that different type of situation here. You're looking at the conceptual review, you go from the current fee to $7,800, just in, 0 to 100. So let's increase it, but let's increase it with the concept that we're going to continue to increase it, and we'll get those professionals in here that understand exactly what it costs and how, and they're the ones keeping track of the increased prices as well.
You know, I really think that a fee study every 10 years is not satisfactory because things are changing so fast. I mean, the telephone I have is so outdated. Probably the laptops that we have are outdated and they're considerably new. But I think a fee study done every 10 years and then just going by the CPI annually is not satisfactory because we have our update in water fees annually, don't we? Yeah, and so I think we need to do something like that, Ms. Harvey, and that's going to help you out considerably. But I really would like to have input, like on a committee that are professionals in this. Did you have a comment, Mr. Cordero? Oh.
No, I think your plan to start it out like Ms. Waterfield says, to start it and then arrange for incremental increases. So we're always going in the right direction to arrive at the end goal.
Absolutely.
To do this. We can't continue to go the way we're going. That's
No, we
No,
can't.
we can't.
And I think a good number of the people are going to understand that, you know, because I don't think anyone here wants to raise a dime. But if we want to continue to provide the services as a city, somebody's got to pay for it. You know?
Well, with that, Madam Mayor?
Ms. Sutton?
Thank you. I have to say, well, I guess I'll start with the question. I remember when we were first having this conversation, there were conversations that staff were having with the development community, correct? Can you talk to us a little bit about the conversations that staff had with developers to get to this point? Were there any?
Yes. Thank you for the question. Yes, we did not have any before the study was done or during the study itself. After the February 2nd meeting, we did have the workshops, and then at the workshops, there was a comments that that the chamber and Mr. Murrah wanted to talk to us, and we did meet with them. I'm going to be the wrong date, but we did meet with them and discuss their comments.
What year was that?
When,
What year?
this year.
This year, okay.
Just a few weeks ago.
Okay.
I don't know what the date was. So we did have conversations with them about that, and so that's the extent of what we had. I don't know if, John, if you've had any others? Sorry.
Mayor, members of the council, in the past, we've had what we call the D2AC meetings, and we would meet on a regular basis with developers and applicants. And, you know, we talk about process efficiencies, and I think what this user fee study is, it's not a look at the process efficiency. The numbers are simply what they are. When we met with the consultant on the development of these fees, it's on the number of hours that staff spends on each process, and it's fairly detailed. Each of the steps, from taking in the application, circulating it, distributing it, meeting with different division departments. We provided input on number of hours per staff member. So it's simply a fairly objective study on how much time is spent. You know, I do think that there are opportunities to look at process efficiencies. A lot of it needs to be very intentional in terms of what our expectations are for public process. There are two things that drive public process, state statutes. There are things that we have to do because the state asks us to do them. And the second part is local policy. Sometimes things go to planning commission and they go to city council because we want the ability to provide input. And so there's a certain cost to that. But if we take a look and decide at another time process efficiencies and decide if there's something that could be at a staff level instead of a public hearing, then we can take a look at that. But for the purpose of this exercise, it's just pretty objective as far as counting staff hours and what they equate to in terms of cost.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Ms. Soto?
thank you. I guess I just want to start, thank you for answering the questions. But I just have to pause and say that the conversations that I'm hearing here up on the dais about needing true professionals, I find quite offensive because we are paying quite capable employees at the City of Santa Maria to conduct this work. As a matter of fact, we hired a consultant company to come in and do this work, this analysis for us. And I mean, I think that I agree with Councilmember Cordero that, and with everybody else here on the dais, that nobody wants to increase fees on individuals. But when you look at the chart that Ms. Harvey showed us, it's very evident that the way that our fee structures are set up right now are very inequitable. And if we're really, and I mean, I heard the public comments say, you know, what about working class families? You know, communities of color, marginalized communities. You know, I think that same tone can be said when we are right now looking at that chart and seeing that taxpayers, which the City of Santa Maria, I have to say, you know, is considered a low-income community, they are paying a larger percentage of these subsidies. I mean, the cost burden is on them. And so even when they may not be directly benefiting from those services themselves. And so, I mean, when we're thinking about, you know, the value of approving the recommendations that the city staff provided us, ultimately if we were to approve them, the value in that is that we're going to be able to continue to grow at a capacity that's sustainable. Whereas if right now we continue to grow at the pace that we're growing, if we continue to, even if we don't grow, going at the pace that we're going, it's just not sustainable and not feasible. And in the end, we're going to be going back to the taxpayers and saying, hey, we need to increase your fees. And those regressive taxes are the most burdensome on working class families. And so, again, and then ultimately what that's going to do is that it's going to make it very unpopular to grow because the burden is going to fall on the taxpayers rather than those who are benefiting from it. And to the point of, well, won't these fees increase costs of housing? Well, housing is up the roof, and we're seeing decrepit, terribly kept, you know, residents here in the City of Santa Maria. And guess what? Their rental prices are still going up.
Mr. Escobedo?
So I would like to start saying that this increase, it's not only necessary but fair. I think that the services and the fee we pay has to be adjusted to the real cost of the reality. Right now we're charging on a reality of 2005, and this cannot. Basically, we're dealing with, I don't know why others. City council member from the past didn't take care of this action. And I see that we want to solve a huge issue, and that's why we go from 0 to 3,000 or 4,000 or 15,000. So, but one of my priorities, I would say, is to keep a city that is financially stable. We have a whole city to administrate. And one of my goals, we don't want any layoffs because of this not being taken care of. However, I find a little bit risky to take a general decision or criteria of just just going to go to 100. We're going to go to 100. And it seems that it's more that a yes or no question, or going from one side to the other. So I would say that it's more about making a specific analysis of each of these topics and see for something that is more fair for everybody. And it seems that and something I would suggest and invite the city councils to have a special meeting to go over these items, the city council to meet up and discuss one by one and how we can find that point where common ground, I would say. I think that would be my request to the city council to meet up in a special meeting or today to go over each of any increase and how we can take the best out of it, because Santa Maria is recognized for being a business-friendly community. But one of the reasons is that because we're charging from 2005, so that helps a lot. So now we have to be able to stay as a friendly community, as a city that is friendly for businesses, but at the same time being more fair to the use of the money of our constituents.
Speaking of money to our
Excuse me, Ms.
constituents.
Soto. Excuse me 1 minute. I want to clarify this. Are you suggesting we go through this line by line or by department?
Itemize.
Yeah, every item.
Every item within a department? Okay. Okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, isn't that the purpose why we hired a consultant to go through every line item, go through every department, talk to staff members who are doing this work day in and day out, talking to our finance team to see, to look, I mean, these numbers were not just pulled out of thin air. These numbers came from a very in-depth study and analysis that also included conversations with employees and with our finance team. What we see in front of us are not numbers that were just, again, pulled out of thin air because we said we need to generate $3.3 million. It was because these are the fees that are needed in order for us to be able to conduct the services that ultimately are benefiting the people who are conducting business here and not the taxpayer.
Yeah, and City Council Soto, I do agree with that. However, I think that the decision-making is not on a consultant, but us as a city council. Therefore, I think that as any other project that has been shown and presented to the city council, we're the ones that needs to be the ones taking the decision and see what's the best for everybody.
And right now, the decision that we're making is the burden falling on taxpayers.
Okay, but we're also not charging anyone in recs and parks anything, and that's a big benefit to people that they are deriving also.
Absolutely.
So anyway.
And the point that you made, Madam Mayor, is that they do provide parks for the city.
And schools.
Everybody benefits from that.
Land
and
for schools.
They provide parks and schools, so it's not that they're this mean, evil entity.
Okay, so, council, what is your pleasure?
Madam Mayor, I would like to
Ms. Waterfield?
make a motion that we approve a 50% increase of the fees and incrementally raise them by bringing in the professionals that work in the industry on every aspect of their profession, and that we reduce the 10-year looking at the fees, maybe to go to 5 years so that we don't get way out there.
To clarify, so reduce 50% of the recommended amount, or?
Yes, 50% of the fees of the recommended amount,
Okay, yeah.
yes. Mhm.
Now, is that also for where it says zero fee that we're charging now? Do we
You
want
know
to
what, I think that we need to make it fair.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
just wanted to
Yeah,
clarify that, because there's some
50%
places we're not charging.
No,
so we-
because I'm looking at the conceptual review, you go from 0 to 7820, you cut that in half, 50%. So everything would be 50%.
But is the question where we don't charge anything? Is that, was
And
that
that's
the
what it-
question?
yeah,
Yeah,
what
that's
it
what
was,
I'm asking,
yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
asking. So where the recommendation is, say, $100 and we charge nothing, then we would go to 50?
Right.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
If I may, because I want to make sure, these are fees, we want to make sure they're legally defensible. So if I understand it, we have in front of us a proposed fee for 243 different items. What your motion is you
Across
are
the board.
enacting 1/2 of the proposed fee as presented.
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
thank you. I just wanted to
Yeah,
clarify.
so-
I-
Yeah,
yeah, that's
across
what I
the
was
board,
understanding.
50% across the board that we see here.
Of the fees as proposed in the staff
Absolutely,
report.
yes.
Thank you.
And then we increase them incrementally, yearly or on a semi-yearly basis, but we need to look at the fee structure again in 5 years, not opposed to the 10 years, because then that puts us way out there, and we need to stay on top of it.
So the recommendation to review them is a three-parter, and I think you were talking about the third part. But maybe you can
Yes.
remind what the three
Yes.
parts are?
So the three parts were, at a minimum annually would be CPI.
Yes.
Every 2 years would be a look at the processes and costs to see if anything significantly changed.
Absolutely.
And then and the third one was at a minimum of every 10 years. So I'm hearing that you want that to be a minimum of something
Of every
less.
5 years, absolutely. And that, we engage, yeah, and we engage the professional public in regards to these as well. So we don't run into this again.
Could I ask you, Ms. Waterfield, could we change, and this may not be, I don't know if it's a good idea, but could we change that 5 years for this time only to a 3-year?
Sure.
And look at these in
Sure.
3 years? Because there's going to be places where we are going to need to raise.
But we're looking at them incrementally,
There's no second. There's still dialogue.
yeah.
Yep.
I apologize, the city clerk and I are trying to be clear. So why don't we break this up and
Okay.
make it clear? So we can deal with the fee itself and then deal with the next time you review it as two motions. I think that's
Okay.
probably a cleaner way to do it. So
Okay.
I heard a motion, but I had not heard a second, that the city council approve 50% of the fees as proposed in the report.
Correct.
And then
And then we'll go to, okay, if we get a second.
Do I have a second on that?
I don't want to be the one telling employees that we're laying them off.
I'll second it for discussion. Okay. Okay, discussion? Mr. Cordero?
Well, if the incremental increase that Councilwoman Waterfield is proposing has input from the community, if we can get anybody to work with this now, I would be more inclined to agree with that. And we would have to have an ultimate goal of the fees going up, even from the 50%. We can't continue to work this way where we're going to raise it 50% and then in 5 or 6 or 7 years we'll be 75% down again. So
No, my motion was to increase it incrementally annually to look at these.
And if we're going to do
Absolutely.
it toward that goal, I could be a little more excited about it. But I do agree with Ms. Tamora that I would like to see some local public input. not just Lori, but there are many other very qualified people in the community that may have another idea on how we can deal with the fee issue in something that they can tolerate as consumers.
You have the Home Builders Association, you have a lot of the, contractors and stuff where you can incorporate those people as well. So this motion is just for the 50%, and then the next motion is going to be to increase it incrementally, annually, to look at it. And then with the 3-year, and we will increase the fees annually, but in the 3-year, look at the overall again, is what the mayor had suggested.
I guess what I would like to say, and I think I'm hearing this, is that we want the cost of service to be paid for.
Absolutely.
I just think that right now, this huge jump is a huge jump.
Absolutely.
And how we get there, and I think we need to get there sooner than later. So to me, 10 years was too far away, 5 years is still too far away. But let's see what we can do in the next 3 years. I mean, this whole year has been an anomaly, and we know that. And so if we can get at least close in the next 3 years, I think would be a goal that we need to look at. And maybe we need to charge more at some of these things and maybe charge less at some of these things, depending on the process. I don't know. But there are people out there that could maybe figure it out. So
Madam
question.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Cordero.
Thank you very much. I think the 3-year suggestion is also good because barring anything really unusual, it could likely be the very same 5 people up here that would be starting this, not from the beginning. I mean, can you imagine coming into something like this and not ever having discussed it before? So I like your idea of the 3-year analysis, and I think for the most part we're all on the same page of wanting the cost of these things to be paid for by the consumer that is going to use them. And are the price of homes going to go up?
Yeah.
Probably so. And we have no control over a good part of that. I mean, we certainly don't control the price of lumber.
That's right.
We don't control the price of the,
Steel.
those kinds of things. So I could find myself voting for the 50%, knowing that we are going to look at getting to where we need to be in the foreseeable future.
Okay.
Mr. Escobedo?
Just a clarification on the motion. Are we talking about increasing 50%, like right away, or doing those
July 1st, is that? Yeah, July
3
1st.
years?
Increasing it, I think the date was July 1st of 2021.
So-
Increase it 50%.
Okay.
And then we can, in the next year, we can come back and look at it to see, what the CPI and those things are. And if that, some things need to be increased, then we increase them, and some things don't need to be increased, you just leave them alone.
Okay, so we increase on July 50%, and then in 3 years, we reconvene and we look into how are we gonna maybe increase it, or we'll see how, like a review of those.
Right, but the
Oh.
first motion is because our city attorney wants to keep it clean, so the first motion is that we make a motion 50%. So that's the motion, increase 50%, and then we'll go back and do the increase, the incremental increase in the 3-year. Yeah, yes.
Okay, let me ask you this, and where does the CPI fit in here, in the first motion or the second motion?
The second motion.
Yes.
In the second motion?
Second motion.
The CPI is part of the municipal code, that annually it will be increased by CPI. So if we make no other changes, there's no other recommended changes, then it would be increased by CPI.
Yes.
That's existing.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, but does it have to go in the motion?
No.
Okay.
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 But-
Okay.
But my first motion is we increase the fees 50% across the board.
Okay.
Clarifying question, how would we determine how it's going to get raised next year? And how far would we be set back? If our goal is to get at 100%, but we're going to still be behind.
Well, we're ahead 50% instead of not, but we are not 50% behind, we're still 50% getting closer to the goal, as opposed to,
If I may interrupt, I think that's what the committee would hopefully assist us in doing, and that is the subsequent motion that we're going to be going into.
absolutely. So,
Do we have to make a motion for the committee too?
no,
Not
not yet.
yet.
Let's just get through this motion, and then we can just,
Okay,
that was my motion.
okay, we've got a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion?
God, no.
Madam Clerk, can you
But,
please?
sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Gethabether?
In that motion, it would come also the leisure and cultural services suggestion, because, I mean, where's
Yes, there's-
51% increase and then 18%, or, because right now it's asked to increase for 18%, and then 20%, would that go to 50%, or it will stay like that? That's in the recreation part, because we're not increasing
not
anything, and I
increasing
personally, I think that's, I wouldn't like to have an increase on,
No,
I think that's one of the biggest investment we can do.
yeah, no, we're not increasing Rexham Park.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
This is for a 50% increase of the, per fees proposed, as proposed. Councilmember Waterfield.
Aye.
Madam Mayor Patino.
Aye.
Councilmember Escobedo.
No.
Councilmember Soto.
No.
Councilmember Cordero.
Aye.
Okay, the second motion would be to annually look at the fees. Well, the CPI is already in there, so do I even include that at all, since it's going to be increased? So in 3 years, we will look at getting to the goal of the 100%, or getting closer to the 100% goal in 3 years.
Can I?
Madam Mayor, was that the intent of your,
Okay, now you're, I'm trying to think, because, you know, I think we evaluate it in 3 years, but I'm also thinking that before the budget next time, there may be an opening that we maybe need to fill, maybe from a recommendation that with the, whatever type of community committee that we have. So that even complicates things even more, right, Mr. Stillwell?
Yeah, we're trying to ascertain.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out how we get to where everyone knows that we need to get those expenses covered. And how do we get there?
So I guess, and again, I'm only trying to help you articulate, I'm not trying
Right,
to
okay, right, no.
advocate. But I think you want to say that, I think you want to establish a policy that you want to get to 100% cost recovery, and that you would want to review fees and then put in a timeframe
3
to do
years.
that. But you've made a you made a policy to get to 100% cost recovery, and you want to review fees on or before 3 years, or something along those lines.
Okay.
That may be what you're trying to get to, as I'm hearing.
And that's what I initially, was saying 3 years, but I don't know if we need to look at something, that's what I don't know, what we need to look at, say, at budget time. But maybe I'm getting this too close. Ms. Harvey?
I think maybe we could just bring it back to council in 1 year for the next increment, whatever that suggestion is. And then we approve that as that next year's, that would then be incorporated into the full budget.
because I would like to look at it annually. I really would, because, you know, we don't know what's going to be happening within a year, as crazy as things have been in the past. I believe we need to look at it annually to see where we are and, incorporate, the professionals in it to get their view of what's going on as well. And yeah,
For where we are now, we can do it annually with the council want to look at it, and then I would suggest we do it biannually ahead of our 2-year budget around
Okay.
this time. I don't know, was that what you were going to say?
Yeah, in the policy that we have with Exhibit B, or Exhibit A, we have the three-prong, right? The first one would be annually CPI, the second one being with the budget cycle, where we would look at those fees and see is there any process changes. So that, I think, gets to the biannual one.
right.
And then lastly, we had the 10-year, so if I'm hearing that we want to do it in 3 years, in the next 3 years, or if we want to do it in 5 years, whichever we want to put in that policy. And we could add another policy statement in here that the goal is to be 100% cost recovery for those items.
Yeah, our intent is to be that way, but whether we get there, or not, but at least we're moving towards that goal. And, we put the public on notice that, our fees are going to be increasing even more. So, let's do,
So those are the items on the policy that we have now. So that might help to be able to draft what the motion would be?
I like the biannually in line with the 2-year budget, so we know exactly what we're doing and we can look at the fee increase. Absolutely, no, absolutely. And then the comprehensive cost of services study conducted in a minimum of 3 years, Madam Mayor?
That'd be fine.
Okay.
Is that by way of a motion that you want to adopt
Yes.
the 3 items? And did you want to adopt that as a policy, you would go to 100% cost recovery?
Yes, and our intent is to get there, not, we'll see how the economy's doing at that time.
Again, it's a
yeah.
council policy. It's
Yeah.
it's a goal. It's not.
Yeah, it's a goal, yeah, it's a goal, it's not a, and then we'll do the minimum of every 3 years as opposed to every 10 years, so we don't find ourselves in this situation again.
So so I may recap.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And I just wanted to point out, so you're talking a full comprehensive cost of services study like we did this time, because that does take about a year to do. Just throwing that out there.
And what's the cost of that?
About $35,000.
Dollars?
Yes. Hours?
Pesos. Well, it's money well spent if we're going to, increase the fees, so,
I just worry about doing it every 3 years, especially hearing the cost of it being $35,000 when.
are you looking at 5 years then?
When I see where we're, and because it's not just every 3 years, it'd be every essentially 2 years, because it takes a whole year for us to, for the analysis to be fully done. And so, if we're going to be spending $35,000 essentially every 2 years for a report that's going to come out every 3 years, and then we're still not going to be at 100%, it just seems like a cost that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I would say more at the 5-year mark if the council is wanting to do it on a regular basis.
Madam Mayor, what do you think about 5 years?
That's fine, whatever you're making the motion.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we get a response. Do you have any?
No, yeah, so basically, we're talking about having some modification or significant changes for the CPI on every year, on every 2 years on the budget cycle, and then the motion would be that the comprehensive study will be conducted every 3 years or 5 years?
5 years. We can do 5 years because the first item will allow increases as well. So it's not that, we're saying we can't increase until we get to the 5-year. We can do it every year.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will
Yeah,
go
so,
5 years, I will.
Mr. Cordero?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Harvey, we've mentioned here tonight the increases, and then we've also mentioned the CPI. Is the CPI a portion of those increases, or does the CPI go up independent of those increases?
If we don't make any other changes, if we don't evaluate and say this is now what the recommended cost is based on the cost, then it's just, we add the CPI to that. So that's the amount that would be added to the fee for that 1 year. So if we do an analysis, for example, at the next year with budget cycle, and we determine that 3 of the fees need to be increased because we've changed our process, that would not, those fees then would be set based on that. All the other ones would have the CPI in them because we made no other change, because that would kind of keep us where we're going. Does that make sense?
Okay, so I just want to make sure that the CPI is not consumed in the raises that Ms. Waterfield is referring to, that the CPI is independent, that the two are going up independently. Okay, I like that better.
Yeah. And that's what that's all about up there. Yeah.
CPI plus
Yeah.
the 50%. Gotcha.
Okay, that's your motion?
Yes.
Okay. You have that, Madam
I
Clerk?
gotta hear the motion again.
Madam Clerk? No. I'd like to hear would like to hear the motion.
Sorry. I understand the motion to be that the costs are going to be annually adjusted by CPI according to the municipal code unless significant changes are made. We'll have a biennial review with every 2-year budget to review significant changes. We would like a comprehensive cost study conducted at a minimum of every 5 years. And finally, that the council has a goal of 100% cost recovery. I didn't hear it
Okay.
over a time frame, but.
Okay.
I second.
Yes.
Should we attach an ultimate time period to arriving at that ultimate goal?
5 years.
If the ultimate goal is in fact to get 100% recovery, then it would seem logical to me that we had a final date. You know, we
Time.
want to have it,
15
we want to
years.
have it, we want to reach final 100% recovery by the year 2030 or
In 5 years.
2035, or whatever we
Do you
decide.
want to tie it in with the comprehensive cost of the service study conducted in 5 years?
Whatever, I just think that we
Yeah.
need to have, if our ultimate goal is to have 100% recovery, then we should also have an ultimate goal of a date.
2026,
You know, that's, you're making the motion.
2026,
So-
that's 5 years.
So basically, when we do the 5 years comprehensive, that's when we can decide if that can be switched to the 100%? Is that, or that's the goal?
That
Or
would be the
what's-
goal.
or
And-
what's-
But of course, you know, the amount's going to change at 2026 because it's going to be a lot higher, so, but still, you know, that's the goal.
Well, ask
Yeah,
the maker of
2026.
the maker of the motion.
Yeah, that's a,
Yeah, cost recovery, the goal of the cost recovery to be in the year of 2026.
100% cost recovery by year 2026.
That's the goal. It may not be the, you know, we may not make it, but that's the goal.
Can we
Okay.
do that?
Yeah, yeah.
That ties in with the budget fine then? Okay,
Perfect,
great.
okay.
Okay, then that's your motion. Okay. Do I have a second?
Yeah, I second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Waterfield?
Aye.
Councilmember Escobedo?
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Councilmember Soto?
Aye.
Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye. Okay. Thank
You
you.
guys didn't hear that.
Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, Mary,
Thank you, thank you.
and we're all sorry.
Next, we have a regular business item. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title?
The City Council will consider a services agreement between Flock Safety and the City of Santa Maria Police Department for the purchase of automated license plate readers.
And the staff report is to be made by our Chief of Police, Mr. Schneider.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. We do have a representative from Flock online, I believe. We may have lost him after the last hour or so. It's possible that he's there.
I did hear someone snoring, so maybe that's him.
Can answer any questions at the end. I'm just going to do a quick overview of the Flock safety cameras. The police department is continually evaluating opportunities to enhance our police services within the community. As we all know, technology plays a big portion of our day-to-day activities in our personal life, and law enforcement is no exception. Our current public safety cameras were purchased in 2015 and are now ending their end of life, and basically have just become outdated as far as their technological capabilities. As a result, it is my recommendation that the city transition to automated license plate readers, also referred to as ALPRs. This is a computer-controlled camera system that can be mounted to street poles, street lights, or attached to a vehicle, and each camera covers 2 lanes of traffic. It is estimated that approximately 70% of crimes involve the use of a vehicle. This system has been particularly effective in aiding law enforcement in the detection and recovery of stolen vehicles. In addition, it is common for stolen vehicles to be used in the commission of crimes, sometimes violent crimes. And in the city of Santa Maria, we've seen about a 66% increase from 2019 to 2020 in stolen vehicles. So that would be something that would be a significant aid in us recovering these vehicles in a timely manner. The license plate readers support the city's philosophy of smart city, safe city, and leveraging this technology will afford the police department an opportunity to address criminal activity in a resourceful and efficient manner. Some of the key points I want to emphasize here is the privacy information. All of the data is secured on a government cloud server storage. The footage is 100% owned by the owner, and images are deleted after 30 days and never sold. Cameras detect unbiased, objective data. There is no facial recognition, which I think is an important point. No personal data is in the system. No immigration enforcement software is part of this. And there is a field that is required for why somebody is searching, and there's an audit trail to know who made that inquiry. And there's access is password protected, and the department will have policies and procedures in place to restrict and protect that privacy. And there's also opportunities for some partnerships in the community, and some of our private organizations, such as the HOAs and businesses that have LPR systems, can share their information with the police department. So if they have a stolen vehicle go through their private property, or it can alert the dispatch and the officers in the field, and they'll be aware of that information immediately. And many law enforcement agencies have had great success partnering with their HOAs and businesses. And some of the benefits are obviously it could serve as a deterrent to crime, provide real-time actionable data to officers in the field, such as stolen vehicles, which we discussed. And it's a great investigative tool to aid in the identification of criminal activity and suspects associated with vehicles. For example, if we had a hit and run and somebody just knew the color and make of the vehicle, we can then access that database and search, and if that vehicle passed through one of those LPR intersections, we'd be able to have some investigative tools to hopefully locate and bring that person to justice on that. Is there any specific questions as to
Any questions from the council?
How many cameras are we investing in?
31 cameras.
31, and they're just going to put across the city of Santa Maria secretly?
So
We're not going to give the locations of them?
Right, what we've done, we have a crime analyst that we've been working with, and they've done a heat map of the city of Santa Maria, and they've used different points of where we've had higher crimes and stolen vehicles, and so they'll strategically place those cameras in those particular areas in the hopes that we'd be able to reduce crime.
Sounds great.
Mr. Escobedo?
You know, this item just came on, it was really on time. So during the last weeks, I've been visiting some parts of my district, and I've received emails specifically for cars doing the drift and and racing, and it's crazy. And it's Blosser and Atlantic and or Hayden Pine especially. You can see in the ground there's I mean, from my point of view, is like how expensive are the tires, and these guys are doing that. So, but people do it, and my concern there is that people using the trail, the river levee, you have kids going and they're with the skateboards, and so I'm really happy that this is coming up. And also one day I was even about to be run over. I was talking with the constituents on the intersection of Western and McAllen, right there by Oakley Park. And she was complaining about cars not respecting the stop sign. And right when she was telling me that, this guy just passed by and didn't stop. So I think that's kind of like, hopefully they will deter these individuals, because, I mean, again, we have a park, we have a school, and so just in time.
Ms. Soto?
Thank you. My question is, this won't be used for traffic enforcement, correct?
Correct. It's more for your criminal investigations. It's not for red light violators. But for example, if somebody's doing donuts or reckless driving, and we could act upon that and do some follow-up, that would be more of a misdemeanor. We could see if we could follow up on that. But correct, it wouldn't be for regular traffic enforcement.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Cordero?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that this technology is outstanding. And I was commenting to Mr. Stillwell that they have similar technology going across the Golden Gate Bridge, where you cross the bridge and it takes a picture of your license plate, and they send the bill to the registered owner of that particular vehicle, and you don't stop anymore. If those of you who are, perhaps Ms. Soto's not old enough to ever know this, but those of us that have gone across that bridge in years past had to stop at a toll booth and pay the $7 or whatever it is. So I went on a trip last year fishing, and coming back, they charged me. They sent a bill to my home about I don't know, 8 or 10 days later. So the technology is outstanding. The other thing that this technology does is that it informs the officer a little bit more about what he or she is dealing with. They know at the outset, because of the input into the computer, that it says that this vehicle is wanted for. Mm-hmm. And so the officer isn't stopping this vehicle blindly. He or she would understand that they're stopping it for whatever the violation is that they're looking for it for. So I think it has a lot of advantages to it, and it's something that we should be involved with in our community. I would certainly be in favor of the higher technology like this.
Thank you. And I'm sure, Chief Snyder, I recall the time that someone had stolen a car in Napomo, parked it under a light on North Broadway where we had a camera, and got out, and everyone seemed to recognize this person. Even if they didn't see his face, they could see his body, and they, according to Chief Martin at the time, they were all saying, well, that's what's his face? And then he went and checked into a motel there, and they were able to catch him. So, and that was when Chief Martin was here, so that was a few years ago.
Right. And we still have our public safety cameras are still, they're nearing their end of life, so we still have those in conjunction with the LPRs that we would have out there. So.
Actually, I have a personal experience. My car was stolen 2 years ago, approximately, in front of my house. And I think, by the way, the San Maria Police Department, we were able to find it. And I was pretty lucky to have it in one piece. And it was lost. It was just drop at Atkinson Park without gas. So it was just a joint ride. So, but there's a lot of people that is not that lucky. One of the employees at Santa Maria High School, one of my friends, she found hers in pieces in Nipomo with a bunch of others. And the thing is that at that time she was living, a lot of her stuff were in her car, like personal. So basically they stole a lot of personal stuff, clothes. So that was a huge deal. And so hopefully these cameras will be able to help us by not letting that happen again or reduce that.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any written correspondence or requests to speak?
No, Madam Mayor, we have no written communications on this item, and I don't see any hands raised to speak on this item.
Okay, I'll bring this item back to the council for any further discussion and/or a motion.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution approving a service agreement between Flock Safety and the City of Santa Maria Police Department for the purchase of automated license plate readers.
I second that, Madam Mayor.
I have a motion and a
I
second.
get 2 seconds.
Any further discussion? Hearing none? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Waterfield.
Aye.
Councilmember Escobedo.
Hi.
Councilmember Cordero.
Aye.
Councilmember Soto.
No.
And Madam Mayor Patino.
Aye. Let me ask you a question, Chief Snyder. How do we know when, say, a camera isn't working anymore?
I see no more pictures.
That's a great question. Maybe our consultant that's on the line could let us know.
Oh, okay.
Same.
Happy to. It's actually a component of our business model that's quite unique. My name is Jesse Munn. I'm the territory manager for Flock Safety. We have software built into the cameras that tells us if they are underperforming or what we call in a caution state. So being the benefit of the model we produce, we maintain these cameras, and during the entire term of the agreement, Flock will either replace or repair any camera that is not functioning correctly.
Are they bulletproof?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay, so is that in a day or in 10 hours, or what's usually the length of time?
General resolution, most problems are software related and can be repaired within a 24-hour time frame. If a technician needs to be sent out on site, we do have multiple W-2 technicians in Southern California, and we would be able to generally have them fixed within 48 to 72 hours.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mund.
I have a question. So
Yes.
these, and maybe I should have asked before this a second. Will these cameras is there any possibility to have some of those in using solar panel? Because I don't know, I think that's it would be a good investment and avoid a constant charge of light. I don't know if that's
Correct. So another unique component of Flock is the anticipation here is to deploy all 31 cameras with solar power. So we do not plan to use any city infrastructure. The only opportunity that I would see for potentially having to run infrastructure from the city would be in a scenario where the city requires a camera in a spot where solar would not function. Just heavy tree coverage, no access for solar, etc. In that scenario, we do provide an option for a wired solution, but I would anticipate being able to find locations where solar would work in every location.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief Schneider. The next item will be a report by the city manager, Mr. Stillwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. The next meeting, let me make sure the header versus the meeting date, right? So the next meeting is May 4th of the City Council. A few items of note there is we will bring back the federal stimulus money for policy direction. We don't have all the details and don't anticipate to have all the details from Treasury by then, but we at least want to get in front of the council and get an idea of what the priorities are. It's a lot of money to spend quickly, so we want to be able to get going quickly on that. We also have a time scheduled to have the County of Santa Barbara present their regional homeless plan. They've been meeting, I think they met with every other city in the county and are explaining what the proposal is and what they want from us. And we have a public hearing on the ordinance amendment to amend our ADU ordinance. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to oral reports of council members. And Mr. Cordero, would you like to start?
Yes, I don't have anything.
Thank you. Ms. Soto?
I don't believe I have any either.
Ms. Waterfield?
Yes, Madam Mayor, on, where are we? On April the 7th, I did the Ben Hay Show. The April 15th, I stepped in for you for SB CAG. And also to let you know that the Santa Maria Police Council is going to be having this year their golf tournament and comedy dinner as they've had annually. We just didn't have it last year, but the date has changed to August. So it's going to be on a Friday, August the 13th, and each of you will be receiving an invitation to it. So keep that in mind.
Thank you. Mr. Escobedo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, last April the 9th, I attend the ethics training, or AB 1234, provided by the California League of Cities, and that's all I did.
Thank you. April 7th, I did the updated Santa Maria Key Leaders Call. On the 8th, I took, there was 25 teams on my team task force council, took them to Santa Barbara for an excursion. We were supposed to go to the botanical gardens, and they wouldn't, at the last minute, they wouldn't accept the whole group. When I got there, we could have split up into smaller groups, but anyway, that's what they had told us over the phone. And so they were able to bicycle up and down the beach, which they just loved, and then they went to the zoo in the afternoon. On the 9th, I did the Rick Blameyer Show. April 12th, Los Adobes de Maria Learning Center reopening. And let's see, April 14th, got on a conversation with the U.S. Department of Treasury on the implementation of the American Rescue Plan webinar, did a video film for Calm, and attended a micro enterprise home kitchen operations proposal meeting through Santa Barbara County. On the 15th, I did the California Cities Housing, Community, and Economic Development Policy Committee meeting. And in the afternoon, did the Santa Barbara County Legislative Briefing. April 16th, did Fighting Back Santa Maria Valley Board meeting. On the 17th, did the Livable California teleconference. And on the 19th, did the COVID-19 Business Resources, the American Rescue Plan webinar. Again, we will know more how we're supposed to implement this. They keep getting you into another webinar and tell you a little bit more to chum you in, and then pretty soon we'll figure out how this is going to work. And this morning I did the Ben Hayes radio show.
Madam Mayor, I forgot
Yes.
one item. We are doing the National Day of Prayer, and that's going to be on Thursday, May the 6th. It's going to be at the Santa Maria Fair Park from 11:30 to 1:30. And it's going to be outdoors. We have engaged the Parks and Recs with their stage, and we're going to be doing it from the stage, and it'll be like a drive-in. Come up in your cars, and you can either sit in your cars or bring chairs and lawn chairs and sit outside your car. Bring a lunch, because it'll be during lunchtime, and just enjoy what they're going to be doing. Pastor Paul Berry is going to be doing a talk on the power of prayer. And First Christian is going to be doing the worship music. And so it's just going to be a really great, great day.
May 6th at what time?
At 11:30.
11:30.
11:30 to 1:30.
Okay, and that is always so nice.
It is. And
he
so
does
we're
such
looking for a
great job.
proclamation from the city of Santa Maria, and Madam Mayor, we would love for you to
Okay,
read that.
thank you very much. Any further comments from the dais? If not, my ladies and gentlemen, this meeting is adjourned.